the girl who started freelance writing for $25 gigs, and now I run a thriving six-figure business. In Q1 of 2023, we brought in more than I did in my entire first year full-time in business, and so far this year, we've brought in more than we did in my entire second year in business. So it's crazy cool to see all of this growth, especially because at the beginning of this journey, I didn't think that this was possible for me. Actually, I didn't even know what was possible back then. So I'm sharing today's video in hopes of doing a couple things. The first is connecting with you a little bit better by sharing my story. So if you aren't familiar with me, you know what has been going on over here. And then also I want to hear from you. So if you want to comment below some highlights from your entrepreneurial journey, that would be fantastic. And then the second thing is to show you that it's totally possible for just a regular small town girl to build a career that she's totally obsessed with and that supports that dream lifestyle that I always wanted. If you don't know me, hey, I'm Jill Wise. I'm a conversion copywriter, brand and marketing strategist, and business coach. And through both my Done For You studio and my education platform, I've worked with, coached, and taught literally hundreds of entrepreneurs just like you how to make good money online. And for many of us, this whole business thing is a journey. It definitely has been for me, with tons of highs, but they didn't come without the lows. And I think you honestly need both if you want to be able to recognize how far you've come. Before I get too far into this video though, I want to pause quickly and invite you to a live, no pitch, totally free webinar that I'm hosting on May 17th of 2023. 90-Day Focus is a strategic planning, part webinar, part workshop designed to help you hit your 5-figure month revenue goals over the next 90 days. It's perfect for freelancers, coaches, and service providers who've plateaued in their business. Like, things are good, but you want to hit your next level and you want to stay there. If you're interested in joining me for that, I will leave all of the information linked in the description below for you. But let's get into things. In today's video, I want to walk you through my entrepreneurial journey because, like I said, it has been a journey for sure. And I haven't done one of these videos in like 2 to 3 years, I think, and I've never done one on YouTube. It was over on Instagram the last time I did a my business journey overview or summary or story time, whatever you want to call it. And I thought, what better time than today? I'm feeling a little bit sick, lingering from last week. I've got my coffee, I've got my notes here, and I just wanted to like chat with you and I guess connect with you a bit more to share where I've come from and how my business has grown so that you can see what is possible. So grab yourself a coffee and maybe put your headphones on if you want to get something done while you're watching or listening to this video. That is totally okay. If you're anything like me, maybe you'll listen to it at double speed. I do that all the time. But this is just going to be like a chatty, get to know me and my story video. And side note is Champy's back here with me. So if you hear those sighs and grumbling and puppy noises, that's him, not me. Just want to throw that out there. And if you see me looking down, it's because I got my notes in front of me. I just want to make sure that like I'm hitting any of the key points that we have going on. So yeah, so let's start way back in the day, and the back in the day being 2014 when I graduated from university. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew that I was going to move to Montreal to be with my boyfriend, he's now my husband, so that worked out well. And I didn't have a job lined up or anything like that. I just found an apartment and decided to go and see what would happen. So that's where I landed my first freelance writing gigs. I like cold pitched for them, and they paid $25 to write about 500 words and also get quotes and photos to go along with them. So it was a lot of work for very little pay. So 2014 is when I started freelancing, $25 for the first gig, and then I landed one that was $200, and I was like, oh my God, I have made it. And I was flipping falafels in the kitchen of a vegan restaurant on the side because I had serving experience, but being in Montreal, I couldn't speak French, so I couldn't work at the front of the house, so that was a whole thing too. But it was fun, right? Like, we were happy, we had a great time that year. It was honestly really helpful that like I just graduated, we didn't really have anything, so it was fine that I wasn't making anything. But fun fact, I did go full-time freelancing for like 1 or 2 months at this time because I got tired of flipping falafels, but it didn't like show up in full-time revenue amounts. It was a lot of work writing for like very little pay. And then in 2015, me and my boyfriend, now husband, moved out to Calgary. We thought that we wanted to try out a new city, see what it was like. So we go out there. I landed some more freelance journalism gigs. I was writing for some magazines. One of them was about mining. Another was about RVing, like just random stuff like that. And it was really cool. I learned a lot. They were still super low paying. Like, my jobs were averaging between 75 and 150 per article, which included interviews and that kind of thing still. So it was a lot of work for still very little, but I was learning so much. Out in Calgary, I got a serving job and then another serving job, and I just freelanced on the side. And in my first full year, full time, I think I made like $7,000, and I was pretty proud of myself, so that was cool. Basically, the first few years weren't super eventful, but it was just like a lot of learning and trial and error and cold pitching for stuff and learning about different industries and learning how to write different things. And in 2016 is when I started to get more like copywriting and content writing gigs. But it's funny because I didn't know what they were called at the time. At one of the magazines that I wrote for, I had an editor, and on the side he had like a branding and marketing agency, and he approached me to help write content for his agency. And after doing this a little bit and working with him on some of his client work, he told me like, hey Jill, you know, you're a copywriter. And I literally went and Googled, what is a copywriter? So now with my newfound knowledge of what a copywriter was, I dug into the world of marketing, and I decided that I was going to go back to school and actually study marketing. So I could know like the words for these things that I had been doing for a while. So I could put like names to, you know, what I was doing. So I went back to school and I was still freelancing, and I think my business was bringing in like a little bit each month, but I was mostly making money from my serving and just like juggling that with school and stuff. It was a lot, but like I was learning not only through school, but on the job too. And it was just, I think, like a really pivotal moment in my business. Even though it was uneventful, it was just like so much learning and putting in the work and the hours and figuring out how this world works. And I'm pretty grateful for it. And then that leads us to 2017, which is when I fully transitioned from journalism into more content and copywriting gigs. And I landed my first other website project along with a bunch of other stuff. Like I just tried so many different things. That first website project, I was paid $250 for it, I think about $200 to $250. And I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. And the business was like super exciting, and I was just so into it. From there, I landed a few other jobs with really cool clients, like a skincare company that I really liked, and a local women's clothing boutique that like they were amazing there. And that job was really cool because I could manage the entire blog. Like that was my job, managing the entire thing. So I would like go in and take the photos and come up with the outlines and schedule the blog posts. It was great. But 2017 is when I had the fateful meltdown that I sometimes talk about. And it was just like, I was so overworked. I was maxed out. I was still doing the serving and finishing up my school and taking on these copywriting and content writing gigs, and it was just a lot going on. And at the same time, I was also like trying to build my own brand, because the year before is when I founded, I guess, like when Words by Jill was born. And so now I had a website that I wanted to build and marketing to do, and I was just trying to learn as much as possible. So it was common to see me working from like 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. or I'd be doing client work until my husband got home, and then we would have dinner, and then I'd go back and I'd spend the evening working on my own marketing or studying, just like doing so many things constantly, trying to make this thing work. So that was a really big year and transition year in like what I wanted to do and what I knew about the industry. And this meltdown was that I wanted to be able to work with clients that aligned with my values and that actually came to me, so I didn't have to cold pitch for everything. So at this point, I raised my rates a tiny bit. My websites were, I think, about like $600 to $800 for the entire website, start to finish. And I started posting on my Instagram and my blog and just like taking my own marketing seriously, or as seriously as I could at the time based on what I knew. And things did start to grow. Like it was starting to work. And then in 2018 is when we decided that we were going to move home back to Ontario and leave everything that I'd built up in Calgary. Some of it was local, and start all over. So when we moved, it was like halfway through the year, and I had no clients at the time. And I just kind of went all in with it. I was like, this is it. Like, I don't want to have to get another job here. I don't want to have to do anything else. Like, I'm going to put everything that I've learned to practice, and I'm not going to cold pitch for any more work. I'm just going to like make this thing work. I'm not crazy, so I did have some savings as a buffer in there to make it work. But at this point, I was just like super committed finally, after years, literally years of messing around. And this year too, when we moved home, I met with a business advisor, and he really opened my eyes to the possibilities and the things that I was doing wrong. So he asked me about my rates, and then he asked me how long it takes me to do certain things, and just kind of helped me with like a bit of, I guess, capacity planning of my schedule. And then he pointed out that I would not be able to hit my goals with the current rates that I had and my current work schedule, and just like things were all out of alignment. Like it would have been it would have been literally impossible to do what I wanted to do with how my business was set up at the time. So I had some work to do, and I had some changes to make, and I started making them. And 2018 is also the first year that I landed my very first 5-figure project. And that was like super cool. I was like, holy shit, I think I get it now. Then we are at 2019, and this was my first full year full-time in my business. It was also the year that we got married, the year we bought a house. We started doing renovations on that house. Literally the moment we got the keys, we walked in the door and started ripping up carpets immediately because the entire place was full of carpets. There was carpets in here before. We laid all this tile ourselves. We did so much work in that year, both personally and on the business too. So that was also the first year that I invested in custom branding for my website. At that point, I had like DIY'd everything and I was getting kind of embarrassed by it. It was time to level up and look a lot more professional. So I invested in custom branding, got the whole brand design, the website design, and I was so happy with it. And that, like the month after the website launch, my revenue monthly doubled, and I just knew that was like a fantastic investment to make at the time. In 2019, I also started email marketing and I started to build my first course, and just like everything was falling into place. It was also the first year that I did not cold pitch for any work at all. So that was like a big moment for me when I realized that, because that was what I had my meltdown about like 2 years prior, right? And then we come to 2020. So things were cruising along and I was like, all of this hard work is paying off and I'm so excited. And early in 2020, I hit my first 5-figure months. Then the lovely C word came along, and we all know what happens with that. I lost all of my clients in like a few days time. So that was not great. But obviously you are an entrepreneur too if you're watching this video this far in. So I'm assuming that you get it when you get these like big blows against you. And something that I've learned over the years is that every time I have like a big blow like that, it always comes back in double. Like it always comes back exponentially better. And that's what happened. I had another meltdown and I had to rebuild from literally scratch, but it didn't take long to do that actually. By the summer, I was hitting 5-figure months again, and I cruised through the rest of the year like finally getting it, like feeling like things are finally clicking. This is also the year that I joined my first like high-level mastermind, and I got so much out of that experience. 10 out of 10 recommend getting coaching from people who've done what you want to do. Like that was so valuable, such a good investment. Then in 2021, a ton of things changed. So things were consistent. I was consistently hitting the 5-figure months that I had set out to get. I was landing better clients and setting better boundaries and just getting the systems and process in the back end of my business in place so well that things were just like running really smoothly and efficiently, and I was able to actually start taking every single Friday off, and I felt like I was living my best life. Like every Friday my out of office responder would come on, and my clients were always so supportive. They were like, yeah, you take Friday off, you work hard, and it felt really good to not only have that time but feel like comfy with where the business was at revenue wise, and feel like really excited about my clients and just know that there's that mutual respect there. So everything was flowing really well that year. And then in June, at the end of June, we found out that I was pregnant. And of course, that meant that I had to shift absolutely everything, because even though things were going really well and I was booked and busy, everything was directly tied to me and like the hours that I put in. So even though I had Fridays off, it was still like all dollars coming into the business were tied to what I was putting into it, because it was still just me doing everything at this point. I didn't have a VA before finding out that I got pregnant. I didn't hire my VA until like of September or October of that year, after I like had spent some time searching for them after getting pregnant. So it was all me, and I had to change that if I wanted to be able to really grow and scale the business. But by the end of 2021, which it had hardships too, like I had a launch that entirely flopped and it made me question everything, and I had to redesign and just like reconnect with who I was and who my brand was, and my whole brand went through a massive evolution. Like it was a big year for that stuff, but I closed out the year with a VA helping me out, and she's still with me. She's amazing. She's probably helping me with some component of getting this video up. And I hired my first junior writer who is also still with me and is also amazing, and just started to lay the foundations of having a solid team in place and continue on that growth journey. And despite the hard stuff, like I remember at one point crying, meltdowns, I cry a lot, and just feeling like I didn't know what would come next, but the year ended up so well, and I guess that's just like a reminder to stick with it. And like I said, every time something bad seems to happen, it usually comes out so much better at the end of that once you get over that hurdle. So when we got to 2022, last year, that was like a huge year for my business. it's really cool how everything worked. I worked full-time getting ready for maternity leave in January and February, and then I took March and April entirely off to have my baby and just enjoy that newborn life. And then I returned to work with very part-time hours. Like in the beginning, it was like 8 to 12 hours a week, just a little bit to like do the bare minimum. But at the same time, I really wanted to grow, so I was hiring more team members. I hired other writers and an editor and started delegating more things and just like learning how to lead all of this stuff. And again, there was hardships too. Like there were some days where maybe I would have to work a lot extra that day because there was a lot of training involved that week, but then I would try to make up for it in a following week because I just knew that it wouldn't be, like it literally wasn't sustainable to be able to do the full-time momming thing and also building my business. So I had to keep like my schedule in check. But in the end, at the end of the year, overall, it worked out really well too. If you want to know more about like how I managed maternity leave and my return to work, I actually have a whole video about baby-proofing your business that I will link below too, but that's kind of like the spark notes of it. By the end of the year, I felt like things were pretty comfy. Like I figured out some of the challenges that I had been met with earlier in the year, and I was ready to do more. So in this year, I've been focused on going back into marketing more actively. Because really I haven't done a lot of stuff over the last 18 months. It was like setting up for maternity leave and then making sure that the team was okay and clients were okay while I was on maternity leave, and making sure my return to work was okay, same idea, just like managing and maintaining and sustaining. And the growth was coming, but I wasn't actively pursuing it in the same way that I am this year, because now I feel like I have the capacity to. So far, 2023 has been the biggest revenue year yet, in terms of like highest month, highest quarter, amazing. It's really cool to see, but also I've been noticing where I want to lean into next and where I need to make changes in order to hit the next level too. And I think that's really important for like all of us to recognize. Like with crazy growth, you also have to pay attention to like what's working for you and what's not working for you, and where you need to make changes and what you want to change next. So that's why I always talk about the importance of having a plan and knowing what your priorities are, because honestly, the reason why I messed around for so many years before going full time, and like why I didn't figure it out for those years before and still had to serve on the side and going back to school and like the low paying gigs and I just didn't have like that clear focus or that plan. Things didn't really click in place for me until I got really clear about like my packages and my processes and how I was going to deliver on the work and how I was going to position myself and the messaging I was putting out. I mentioned that I needed to revisit my packages and my rates in order to actually hit the goals that I set for myself, because I hit 6 figures on my like New Year's goals list for years before it actually happened. Like the first few years was nothing compared to what it is now. And I didn't pay attention to how to position myself to land the higher paying clients and the bigger projects and all of that. So once I got clear on what my plan was and what I needed to prioritize, and I cut out everything else, like there's so many things you don't need to focus on, that's when the magic started to happen in my business. And that is what I try to help others with as well, because I know squirrel brain is real, shiny object syndrome. I've been there, I get it. It's so real, and I don't want you to get stuck up in that. And all of this leads back to the live webinar that I told you about in the beginning of this video. It's totally free, no pitch. Like I'm not going to try to sell you something on the webinar or anything like that. I just want to connect with you and see some of you live. And that is 90-day focus. And this is the kind of stuff that we're going to be talking about on the webinar. I mentioned that it's part webinar, part workshop. So we're going to be doing part like lecture style, and then also going through the exact exercises and reflections that I went through on my own, and also have guided clients through as well in order to figure out what to prioritize next. And the goal being that by the end of the 60 minutes together, you have very clear steps that you need to take in order to hit your 5-figure revenue monthly goals over the next 90 days. Because if you really focus, I don't think you need to wait years. I wasted years, so you don't have to. So that's what we're doing in the webinar, and I would love to see you there. I'm gonna leave the information to register in the description box below, but let me know if you have any questions about it too. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you there. So to wrap up the story time, that is where we're at. It was a lot of evolutions and a lot of messy bits and just changes and learning, and I guess this is kind of like the spark notes. Like I could get into the details of all of these different years. If you have any questions, you can ask them, but that's like, I guess, a high level overview of how my business has evolved over the years. And I hope that you found this rambling helpful for you, or maybe a little bit interesting. I don't know. I love to learn about where other people started and like how their growth journey has looked. So I hope that you enjoy this too. I'm gonna leave you here though. I'm gonna leave the 90-day focus information in the description box, and I will chat with you soon. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today.